No, and they even admitted on the stand that in all of their previous undercover operatives,
Most.
yeah, they used recording devices. So what was so different about this case or this incident that no one used one?
3 undercover RCMP officers, 3 witnesses, 3 women. Today's proceedings in the trial for Chris Carbert and Anthony Olenek saw the Crown invite its 3rd female undercover operator UCO from the RCMP to testify here in Lethbridge, Alberta. Robert Krajcik reporting for Rebel News. Both Chris Carbert and Anthony Olenek are charged with conspiracy to murder. The Crown is alleging that they conspired to murder police officers during their time participating in the 2022 Coutts protest and blockade. The 2 men are also charged with unlawful possession of firearms for a purpose dangerous to the public peace. They are also charged with committing mischief, inducing damage valued at over $5,000. Olenek is also charged with unlawful possession of an explosive device for a purpose dangerous to the public peace. Now, that Coutts protest and blockade occurred alongside the Freedom Convoy in Ottawa at the same time. The 2 demonstrations shared civil disobedience and a peaceful method of protest to oppose this series of edicts, mandates, and orders issued by all levels of government marketed as public health measures, ostensibly to combat COVID-19 transmission. This 3rd female RCMP UCO that testified today remarked on the joyous atmosphere and pleasant, friendly dispositions of the protesters at the Coutts blockade and demonstration. She described it as, quote, a very happy environment where people were hugging. She also said there were, quote, lots of families, lots of kids. The prior 2 female RCMP UCOs both denied using either romance or sexuality as investigatory tactics when questioned by lead prosecutor Stephen Johnston. Now, keep in mind that neither of these terms were specifically defined in an investigatory context. Neither witness nor Stephen Johnston set clear parameters as to what is or is not use of either romance or sexuality as an investigatory tool. This was done to protect her anonymity, to hide her identity, given the fact that she still works as an undercover investigator for the RCMP. Today we heard the 3rd female RCMP undercover operator, this UCO, testify as a witness for the Crown. Is there anything that jumps out at you or that seems noteworthy about the fact that the RCMP used women as undercover investigators in this Coutts protest blockade investigation?
Very much so. Tony's a single man. And I believe that they used 3 women, attractive young women, to lure Tony. He was a target by these 3 women. And it was a tactical game, I guess.
So to make this really simple, it's no accident that 3 of them were women and not men.
Well, why didn't we have 3 undercover male officers?
Or 2 in 1.
Absolutely.
Marilyn Burns, the defense attorney representing Anthony Olenek, really drove this point home about the atmosphere of the Coutts protest and blockade. She asked this 3rd female RCMP UCO during cross-examination whether she agreed with the description of the protest as, quote, a very, very happy time for a number of days. This female officer replied, quote, yes, people were very happy to be there. Burns then emphasized the point. She asked, quote, it was all about happiness? To which this female RCMP UCO said, yeah. Just as her 2 predecessors did during the previous day's proceedings in this trial, this female undercover operator from the RCMP testified in a courtroom that was inaccessible to members of the public or the news media. She testified in a courtroom with the judge, the prosecutors, defense attorneys, the defendants, the jurors, and courtroom staff. The rest of us were sat in a separate courtroom listening to a live audio feed of her testimony and the proceedings more broadly, so we could not observe her. That means that she did not have any sort of recording device for audio or video, either on her person or strategically placed surreptitiously in some place of investigatory interest. Okay, now one more thing that we've seen from the previous two RCMP female UCOs. When they were asked whether or not they used sexuality or romance, those are quotes from lead prosecutor Stephen Johnston, as tactics in their investigations, they both denied it. They used the term sexual integrity, saying they didn't violate their sexual integrity, whatever that means. Does that seem believable or tenable to you?
Absolutely not. I'm a woman, and I'm sure many women, every woman probably has used sexuality to gain an advantage in their life at some point.
Yeah, welcome to the human condition.
Absolutely.
Just as was the case with the prior two female RCMP UCOs, today's female undercover investigator's testimony was almost entirely focused on Anthony Olenek, with her testifying to claims that she says he made in her presence. Unlike the questioning of the previous two female RCMP UCOs, lead prosecutor Stephen Johnston did not ask this third female RCMP UCO whether or not she had used sexuality, his word, or romance, again, his word, as part of her investigatory toolkit. One of the central themes here, the common denominators, is that all three female RCMP UCOs testified that they did not use digital recording devices as an investigatory tool during their presence over at Coutts. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Absolutely. First of all, if I was their bosses, I'd ask why they did not use these devices. One officer said she had 3 of them in her pocket. Why were they not used?
Oh, you mean the cell phone?
Absolutely. I can't take my cell phone in the courtroom for the simple purpose that I might record what goes on in the courtroom. These women had devices, whether it was a cell phone, whether it was a watch, they could record endlessly at any moment, at any time. They could start recording. Why didn't they record for 1 minute? They were there for 4 days, 5 days, 7 days, however long their assignment was in Coutts. At one point, not one point did they turn a device on to record what was happening. That I find very, very, very suspicious.
According to this third female RCMP UCO's testimony today, Anthony Olenek was, quote, talking about how they should all die, while he performed a, quote, slit his throat action, which was described to us in the secondary courtroom because we could not observe her. Apparently, this witness ran her thumb from one side of her neck to the other to depict what she said she saw Anthony Olenek do when he made that statement. When lead prosecutor Stephen Johnston asked her who they was a reference to, she said she was unsure. She did not know whether or not that was a reference to police officers. Like her previous two counterparts, this third female RCMP UCO testified that she did not use digital recording devices as investigatory tools during her deployment in Coutts. She also said that Anthony Olenek spoke about a, quote, run and gun scenario in which he may have some violent confrontation with law enforcement in the context of this Coutts protest and blockade. Today we heard the third female RCMP undercover operator of this UCO testify as a witness for the Crown. Is there anything that jumps out at you or that seems noteworthy about the fact that the RCMP used women as undercover investigators in this Coutts protest blockade investigation?
Very much so. Tony's a single man. And I believe that they used 3 women, attractive young women, to lure Tony. He was a target by these 3 women. And it was a tactical game, I guess.
So to make this really simple, it's no accident that 3 of them were women and not men.
Well, why didn't we have 3 undercover male officers?
Or 2 in 1.
Absolutely. No, and they even admitted on the stand that in all of their previous undercover operatives, they used recording devices. So what was so different about this case or this incident that no one used one?
Right. Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's awesome because I want you to say it because We at Rebel News view this trial as a matter of deep importance to all Canadians. We hope you folks out there in our dear audience agree with our assessment. Keep in mind that there are no other so-called mainstream or legacy news media outlets here at the trial with any sort of regularity. And unlike them, we're not getting payouts from the federal government in order to say the right things. We're also demonetized across all major digital platforms for being, let's say, politically inconvenient. We depend on donations from our audience to keep the lights on, to keep this operation going. So please visit truckertrial.com, contribute what you can, and stay up to date with our ongoing coverage.